I really didn't know which way to turn, but standing still wasn't an option. I needed to forget all the pain, hurt, and emotions of my childhood. Somehow get closure so I can move forward with my life. To seek real purpose, love, compassion, a sense of true belonging, to finally escape the shadow of my father. Hello guys, and welcome back to My Purpose in 10 parts. This is part 3, the Crossroads, which way I should turn next. Now, on my journey through seeing lots of turmoil and abuse, we've covered the stages where my mum and dad were in a very toxic relationship, and it wasn't pretty, to be honest with you. So what I very much want to explore now and tell my story, really my journey in life. So at this point I was about 16, just leaving school, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. You know, it was just, I don't want to be like my dad. You know, I really didn't want to be like him because he wasn't a great advocate for perfection or decency, really. So I wanted to change that. I want to break that cycle that seemed to be casting a shadow over a couple of generations, with his dad behaving in a very similar way. So at this point I was living with my mum, and we had moved from the white bungalow where my dad tried to break the door down with an axe, which I explained in part 2, and we moved to a 3-bedroomed house in Autumn Goldhay, and it was I think the road was Wyn Yates. And I was about to leave school, and it was a 6-week summer holiday. I was 2 weeks in, and I started looking for work because I didn't want to sit at home for 6 weeks. So I went knocking on some doors and wasn't much going, bearing in mind at this time I was very young still. So what I decided to do was try a hotel. I knew I wanted to be a chef at this point, so I went to a hotel called Alton Hall Hotel, and there was a head chef there called Mark Jones, and he was absolutely fantastic. He took me under his wing. His guidance that I'd previously sought from my uncle, now under the wing of Mark Jones. So it was a very significant point in my life. I was becoming a man, and I basically started an apprenticeship. So this was with a college, and I remember my tutor used to get a day release called Robert Presland. So he, between Mark and him, gave me great structure in my life, and I was earning £40 a week, which nowadays I don't think most kids would get out of bed for, and I wouldn't blame them. It is a little bit of slave labour. So I was into my apprenticeship, doing an MVQ level 2 in hospitality, and in the process we were preparing all the food homemade. So my idols were Michel Roux, the Roux brothers, Marco Pierre White, Gordon Ramsay. We did everything from spun sugar to homemade truffles, bread, ice cream. The one that sticks to my mind most was the lavender ice cream. That was absolutely fantastic. We gained an accolade for good food, so we were the first team within the Autumn Hall Hotel that actually gained a rosette. And it was a very historical point for the hotel. It was a historical point for us as a team. So I spent 2 years at Autumn Hall Hotel. In this time I hadn't seen my dad at all, and my life was starting to get balance. So I've come to the end of the 2-year apprenticeship, and I wanted to carry on embarking on that journey of being a chef. So I managed to get a job with the help and guidance of my tutor and head chef at the time, Mark. So I went to live in Aylesbury, and I worked in a hotel live-in position as a commis chef for a hotel called Hartwell House. Now, this was a very grand place. It's still there today. If you haven't been, you should go. It's got a spa and everything. It really is fantastic. This was at the time a 4 rosette hotel, and I think, if my memory serves me correctly, they were trying to establish getting a Michelin star, which is, let's face it, it's the highest point of anyone's career. The head chef there was called Roger, and the senior sous chef was called Daniel. Now, I do believe Daniel still works there today, so big shout out to Daniel. He was a very placid chef, a ton of experience. But yeah, so I worked in there for approximately a year, living in the staff accommodation, which was I think it was a 5-bedroom house, and it was about a 10-minute walk to the hotel. Now, it really was long hours. You know, we were working, some days we did breakfast, so we took it in turns, and that would be start at 6 and then finish for a split shift, so that would have been roughly about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. We'd go home, have a little sleep, shower, ready for the evening service, and that really was the finale of the day, because it's where you get to see all the good food, prepare it, you know, get shouted at if you're not pulling your socks up. So it was very very regimented in that time, but it was good. It was hard, but it was really good, and my life felt like I was getting some sort of purpose. So I then decided to leave there. Bear in mind, this is high class, high end catering. So I did a year to gain the experience, but then my granddad had died. Now, this was my biological granddad that I never had a relationship with, because he was not a very nice man to my nan back when they were a lot younger and just got married. So he had passed away, and then in that process I went to work. This is ironic, but I went back to work at Freeman's, but not in the warehouse. I was working as a chef. So I remember my boss, Philip Wood, and we churned out a lot of food. We had a pizza bar, omelette bar, we had homemade scones every day. So it was, and it was 9 to 5, weekends off, 9 to 5. So what more could I want? Well, that's what you're going to think. But my mental health started to take a bit of a downturn due to old memories re-haunting me, coming back, flashbacks from my childhood, the shouting at my mum by my dad, my mum's head coming through the door, being dragged through, and it was as if life paused for a while, and I couldn't see a way out. I could just see darkness, and so I referred myself for some psychotherapy. This was ultimately counselling, so I could really get off my chest what I'd been bottling up all of these years, right from a very, very young age. So I did 6 months of that, and that seemed to really help, seemed to put in those missing parts, fine-tune the cognitive behaviour. So in that time, unfortunately, I lost 2 more family members. Now, my auntie, who was only 40 at the time, Auntie Anne, she was a fantastic lady, did anything for anybody, a kind, gentle person, and it felt so wrong that she'd been taken so soon. A few weeks later, or a couple of months later, my step-granddad, he had sadly passed away due to ill health. He was a type 1 diabetic, and the hospital were trialling different medication for him. He lost a lot of weight in the process, but something clearly wasn't right, and as a consequence, unfortunately, he passed away due to ill health. So that was an incredibly sad time. I'd watched my nan go from being this really strong lady, determined, tenacious, but to this shell. She was completely broken. She'd lost the love of her life. We'd lost our granddad, and it was a tricky time. My sperm donor dad wasn't much help, to be honest with you. He didn't see her, so I started caring a bit for her, just not that she was incapable of caring for herself, but just to be there, somebody to vent to give her some moral support. And I love my nan. I absolutely adored her. She was like a second mum to me. We did a lot together. She did a lot for us as well, me and my brother. 6 months had passed and I was getting really itchy feet. What I mean by that is I felt that I needed to live life. Now, I'd looked back at so much darkness, turmoil, had a troubled childhood, troubled everything really. It was as if I had a voice in my head that was trying to pull me down all the time. And I didn't want to feel that anymore. I didn't want to feel that worthlessness. I had a bit of fire within me and conviction. So what I'd done was I'd quit my job at Freeman's as a chef. I'd booked a one-way ticket, a return ticket to Spain, and I was determined to really start living. So I packed, I've still got it to this day, a 65-litre rucksack. I packed that of essentials that I needed. I'd already booked my flight, and this was from Luton Airport. And I said goodbye to my family, told my nan that I love her and I need to find new. So I got on the flight. I had at the time nowhere to stay, no accommodation when I get to the other end whatsoever. So as I'm making my descent down into Mahon, which is Minorca in Spain, and I deliberately chose that place after doing some careful research, it dawned on me that I couldn't speak Spanish at the time, so I needed somewhere that could be easily I could easily speak my language and be understood, and also at the time learn. So my plane landed in Mahon. I was walking around Mahon, talking to people, asking them where the best place is to go to find work, to find some digs. So I hopped into a taxi and I said to the driver, where's the best place to go for work, a holiday destination? So he pointed out Cala Porta. For those of you who haven't been there, it's a fantastic place, really is. So I'm making my way into Cala Porta via the taxi, and it was a beautiful day, really, really beautiful. It was so different. I felt this huge release. I was doing something for myself, and it felt good. And for the first time, I didn't feel any guilt for that, which, I didn't need to worry. My mum was now in a safe place, in a very loving and happy relationship. My brother was doing well for himself. I think he was working at Mackie D's at the time. And I thought, right, yeah, I'm going to really grab this. So I went round, got out the taxi, went round a few restaurants, asked if there's any work, anywhere to stay, because when you're a chef, sometimes you can find free digs. and they just take a small portion out of your salary. So that was the idea. So I went round about 5 at this point, and I remember this when I went to another restaurant called La Salamandra, and I remember this young Spaniard. He was probably about my age, but really, really tall. And I'd asked him if he'd got any work. He said no. So I asked, is there anywhere that I can stay? He pointed me in the direction of a hostel. And this hostel was called Castillo Le Hostel. Sorry, my Spanish is really bad, but so I stayed there. Now this was like a hotel, really. It was meant to be a hostel, but I remember walking through reception and it was all medieval, you know, like something out of the medieval times, at real aristocracy about it. I can't pronounce that word very well, apologies, but yeah, very 16th century or something along those lines. And it was like long chandeliers with candles in them. There was great draping curtains. It was, you know, wooden tables, no chairs, benches, and it was just awesome. The smell of the food was beautiful. So I went up to my room, got shown where my room is, went up to my room, and I walked in this room, and it was so clean. A fully tiled floor, 2 beds, and an ensuite as well. You know, and this cost me, at the time I went to Spain, this cost me, what was it? It was pesetas then. It was equivalent to £9 a night to stay in this place. So I just couldn't believe it. You know, it was just like, oh, freedom at last. So whilst I was staying there, I went, you know, I was being proactive, went searching for some work, and I went into a Scottish bar. This was a Scottish themed bar run by a Scot, great guy. His name was Tony, and he had set up a life for himself with his wife and his children, and I thought, what a fantastic idea. So I said to Tony, I said, look, have you got any work? And he's, you know, in his Scottish accent, no lad, you know, and I said, well, could you point me in the right direction? So he said, there's a place just down there by the cliff. It's called Club Minorca. So I was like, okay, sounds weird. I was expecting some sort of nightclub, to be honest with you, because the word club, but maybe it's me being a bit stupid. So I walk up there, and I knocked on the door, and I thought, this is an absolutely beautiful place. It was, I will try and get a picture up for you guys, but it was a hotel embedded into what was the cliff face, and it overlooked the harbour with catamarans and the beach, and it was just stunning. So I thought, oh, I've really looked out here, so I need to see if I can get a job. So anyway, I'm knocking on the door, I'm waiting for an answer, and then this short, really tanned bloke answered the door and went, "G'day, mate." And I said, "Oh, I'm looking for some work." And he goes, "Cor blimey, bambino." So I was like, oh, it's a bit odd, but he was clearly Australian, and apologies, my Australian accent is awful. So he said, "Oh, what can you do?" And I said, "Well, I didn't want to let him know I was a chef. I wanted to morph into something different, be something different, just for a little while, just to see." So I said, "Well, I can do anything, you know." I said, "I can be a cleaner." He goes, "Cool, okay." So I said, and he goes, "Where are you staying?" I said, "Well, I told him where I was staying, at the hostel." And he said, "Well, you can live here." And I was like, "Oh wow." So I said, "Well, how much will that cost me?" And he was such a generous man. He let me lodge there for free. So I went to see my room. Now, my room was overlooking the harbour, so I was aside overlooking the harbour, and it was just stunning. It had double wooden windows looking out, and to my left was the terrace restaurant, which when on that terrace restaurant, it looked as if you felt as if you was on a boat, a cruise liner. It was just absolutely stunning. So I looked at my room and I thought, oh, fantastic, you know, it was just what I needed, for especially for free. I thought, great, I can save my money, you know. And he was paying quite a generous rate at the time. So yeah, I was doing bits of cleaning and stuff around the hotel, then just, you know, doing a bit of bar work in the evenings. And he did have a chef at the time. Now, the chef was a French student. I'll never forget it, where I walked in and he was in the kitchen in his flip-flops, t-shirt, shorts, and a cigarette hanging out of his mouth. And I thought, this is not what I'm used to. This is really different, you know, this is incredibly different. So he, at the time, didn't last. He went back to France. So, and in this time, my boss had done some research on me, because, you know, I'm just a random bloke turning up. And he goes, "Oh, you're a chef?" And I said, "Yeah, I am a chef, yeah." He said, "Do you fancy running the kitchen?" So I was like, okay. So I watched the French chef go back home to France, and I was now at the helm of all the catering in this fantastic 14-bedroomed hotel. Now, I'm going to leave it there for today. I don't want to make these videos too long. What happens next will surprise you, and yeah, it's quite a new dramatic turn in my life. So please watch out for part 4. Please like, share and subscribe. This helps me to facilitate different locations and able to have the chance of being monetized on YouTube. I'd love to have that opportunity and bring different content weekly to you. So if you want to, please like, share and subscribe. I'll be very grateful. Bye for now. My mum, me and brother are now survivors of domestic abuse. So what's next? How do we navigate this new journey of freedom